What were the mistakes you made in a relationship? Not accepting a breakup gracefully and demanding too many explanations. This happened twice with the same person. Once at 20 and once again at 21 or 22. Thought I could argue him into staying. Even though that makes no sense, and why the F would I want to be with someone who doesn't want to be with me? Now I'm 27 and can't imagine doing that again. I have more restraint, more self-respect, and more perspective and experience to see when someone is way less invested than I am. I did the same thing at 30, so don't feel too bad. 44 here. Just did it earlier this year. Really disappointed in myself, but I also accept that part of what causes that is lack of good communication in the relationship to begin with, so the resulting confusion causes a lot of turmoil, and during times of turmoil people naturally try to make sense of things. Yes, I embarrassed myself terribly, but I also thought everything was perfect up till when he did it, so I couldn't make sense of anything, and my world was completely turned upside down. Not reacting well was the only real answer at that point. Don't be embarrassed. Relationships take work. And I'm sure in that moment you thought you were just fighting for it. Good for you for swallowing your pride and giving it your all. Now you know for sure that it wasn't right because you really tried to make it work. You can and should be at peace with it being over. Not communicating. I always expected my ex to know what I was feeling. Likewise, I wouldn't speak up for myself when he did something to hurt me. I was a little manipulative at times. Looking back I cringe, and I'm way better at openly communicating with my current so. At the time I was young, 18 over 19, and didn't know how to communicate. It was my first relationship and first time navigating the things that come along with relationships. I think this is really common. I had this issue too. It's so insane, like, if you love me, you'd know what I'm thinking. What? Right. It is really common. And I cringe now, because he wasn't a mind reader. For me, I think, I was bad at communication. I just could not express love, and even if I did it seemed forced. Eventually figured out I don't even have feelings, and I left, so that was bad. You're supportive of everyone in this thread though, or thank you 3. I didn't realize I was doing this until I recently saw a thread in r/relationship where the man's fiancé was doing what I did and everything clicked. I was doing things for my husband that he didn't expect, want, or ask me to do, and then I would get upset when I felt like he didn't appreciate it. Then when we would get into arguments I would try to use it against him and say I do so much for you. I always put you before me. He would argue back I never asked you to do any of those things, and I would be so hurt when he would say that because to me, it was how I showed I loved him, and I wanted him to show it back in the same way. Was it projecting? I've done this as well, and it's because one of my biggest love languages is acts of service. I wanted my partner to do what I had done for them, because in my mind, that's how I feel most loved. Knowing when I feel the most loved, and when my partner felt most loved helped a lot. Yup, exactly this. My husband is very good at telling me he loves me, and for him, that was enough, because that's his love language, and how he wanted me to love him. Like you, I wanted him to show me he loved me by doing things for me, exactly the way I did for him. Yes, exactly. Not like do everything for me, but little things, like I know you hate doing the dishes, so I did them. I hope you guys are doing better. So many. I have emotional regulation issues, woo, childhood trauma, so I often get really angry over very little things. I get too wrapped up in it and have said and done things that have really upset my partner and nearly led to a breakup on multiple occasions. I struggle to communicate my feelings or even understand them due to my parents making me suppress emotions growing up. So communication is a big issue. Sometimes I can't even just say I'm angry about. I can become a bit selfish when in bad moods, and in the past have made the mistake of resenting my partner for having a perfectly nice, healthy childhood, and also for being depressed despite having a good childhood. I guess because my mental illness is specifically trauma based. I'm in therapy now, though, so I'm working on applying techniques that prevent these faulty thought processes, and I'm working on stepping back and trying to figure out what's wrong, so I can properly communicate the issue without immediately resorting to the harmful mechanisms I was taught growing up. It's tough, but I'm improving. Not getting over my traumas before getting into a relationship. You really don't know how fucked your head and actions can be until you're better and snap the hell out of it. Edit. Thank you so much for the awards. How self-growth is key. Home is keep it real. My first relationship was a mess. I didn't have any self-respect and was too desperate to get love. I had the perception that love had to hurt. As a result, I let a lot of hurtful things slide when I should have left. I did a lot of tests to see if he would care. I flirted with other guys to make him jealous. Bad move in itself. I broke up with him as a final test. Worse, we got back together because I begged. In the past I have had a hard time breaking up and determining my own feelings. In general, I struggle with towing the line between having standards and being prejudiced. I can be impolite and haughty expressing my standards and have often hurt boyfriends like that. I took him for granted. Assumed he'd always be there because he had always been there. I put my career before just about everything. I wanted him to just know how I felt instead of telling him directly. Then I got disappointed when he didn't do what I hoped he would. I didn't make sex a priority at all because it was his main focus, and I felt like that's all he cared about, and that turned me off. I could keep going. Kind of surprised and disappointed to not see this stated more here. You just outlined the major issues in most posts about relationships on Reddit, and it seems like the mistakes that people are admitting to here don't line up. It's easy to place blame. It's difficult to accept it. It always takes two. I've noticed the biggest issue in relationships now is that no one wants to take responsibility for their actions or issues. I have a firm handle on all my baggage, and I'm ready to correct those mistakes if the opportunity ever arises. The good news is, I'm perfectly happy if it doesn't. Wish you were Elizabeth. She had many of the same problems, but she refuses to work on her shit. It's a shame, because I loved her, and I loved us deeply. But if she can't love herself and prioritize her own needs, I can never get back with her. Alcoholism. Same. Not communicating well and giving space. I have learned so much since going to my psychologists. Some problems aren't fixed in a day or a week, while I demanded them to be. Not speaking my mind, combined by in general not knowing my boundaries or feelings. These things finally came out of my mental freezer, but doing something with just rediscovered feelings is hard. It's sad since my ex would 100% respect them. I just did not know how to feel and act upon it, not realizing my partner needed space to reflect on their actions and collect their feelings. I'd just try to see him when I have free time, not when we both wanted to or had the energy to see each other. I couldn't manage my expectations and made fantasies in my head about when and what should happen. Now I can see someone for who they are, and I regret not really listening to my ex. We broke up fine a few months ago. Have no contact for a week now. It's weird, but it's nice to have time to think without pressure of someone else, and I can understand him more. Not communicating. Trying to deal with everything myself and never saying when something bothered me led to heaps of resentment and a very miserable last year of a 4-year relationship. Oh man. I would try and solve every problem myself. I'd be upset about something, and instead of talking about it, I would try and fix it without bringing them into it. I don't do this anymore, but it's super embarrassing. This is the same for friendships and romantic relationships. I only realized after a friend explicitly told me I didn't set boundaries at the beginning. Let them get away with too much, and then began to resent them. Hard to ever get over resentment once it sets in. Keeping my thoughts and feelings to myself, because I was afraid it would make my partner unhappy. Trying to do extra emotional labor to make up for the personal failings of experiencing distress or pain, and being quietly upset when it didn't make the problem go away. For a while, as a teenager, I thought I was being abusive if I was caught crying, or if I told my now ex-boyfriend I was having a bad day. Just stupid, messed up things that made everyone unhappy. If I've learned anything, it's to be honest. Even if you ramble, or the words don't always come out right, you can calm down and explain it better later. Or even if you feel stupid, or silly, or weird, you should be honest with yourself and the people you love. Two things come to mind. -1. Not expressing my feelings. I'm not a very let's talk about our feelings type of person, and so whenever boyfriends or guys I'm talking to start expressing love and admiration for me, I shut down too, harping on them during fights. This is something I do in any relationship, platonic or romantic, and it's just basically that when a fight starts going, I like to dredge up everything I've been resenting them for, every little thing I got offended about in the past 3 months. And generally I just harp on whatever the fight is about. So instead of going, hey I didn't like when you gave me an apple, okay sorry, it becomes, hey I didn't like when you gave me an apple, okay sorry. No, let me provide multiple paragraphs about how upset I am that you gave me an apple. Obviously the apple thing is just a random example. I wouldn't be upset at all if someone gave me an apple. I love apples. How these two things are definitely related. I always want to be the receiver. I don't put in enough effort when it should be a give and take relationship. Not communicating about small things that bothered me because I didn't want to be a bother, which in turn turned into resentment. Faking my orgasm just to make him feel good. Now he thinks is the best and won't try anything new. Not talking about my negative feelings. I mainly show my positive side and hide all the negatives. So all the sadness and anger got bottled up until I couldn't hold it anymore and burst. I've gotten a bit better at it lately, but it's still something I need to work on. I always needed attention. If I decided he wasn't paying enough attention to me, I'd start an argument or I'd pretend to be ill. I don't do that anymore. Proud that you don't do that anymore. Shows growth. Codependency, wanting to change for my partner so they'd like me more. Depending on my partner for happiness. Loving it when my partners were so insecure that they'd need me and in my mind wouldn't leave me. Making my relationship my hobby. Diminishing my own needs to make the other person happy. It's also embarrassing to think about. Manipulative tendencies / lack of good communication. Blowing problems out of proportion and being ostentatiously hurt so they'd feel bad and give me attention. Instead of just communication. That I was insecure and was in need of assurance. Putting up with a lot of S because I was afraid to be alone. Not having the balls to call it quits. I just left a codependent relationship and I'm in so much pain. So much pain I feel like I can't breathe. It gets better with time. I know exactly how you feel and trust me. Time heals this. Call the people you care about to chat and vent. It helps a little. This feeling is only temporary, and I'd advise taking a good break from dating to recover your sense of self and independence. Once that I'm dying without them feeling passes, it gets much easier. Good luck and stay strong. Yes, no dating. It'll only be unfair to the other person. I can't bear the idea of that right now. Thank you for writing. I always relied on my partners being happy. I forget to make myself happy. But now you remembered. I'm in the same place. Wishing you the best Sunday. Take care. AWW. Thank you. Sweets. Yes, I do remember, and I have an amazing partner to remind me all the time now. You have a lovely Sunday 2x. I can't really even name one, because there were so many. I acted insane. I was immature as fuck. I could not take no gracefully. I acted in so many ways that make me cringe so hard. Forgetting about myself, ignoring my feelings, asking too little out of relationships, and being run over a lot, not expecting much more than sex and conversations, being taken for granted and letting it happen, paying too much, neglecting myself, thinking I was cool for being low maintenance, but I just expected too little. IDK, I don't want to date again, too much. Initially liked my husband when we were dating, a little too much. I let a lot of things go that I shouldn't have, and tolerated his bad communication habits, one-word responses, leaving me on read, even though they made me sad / stressed, because I was afraid of losing him. I ended up bringing those bad habits up to him, When I felt more comfortable with the relationship, he apologized, agreed that he was wrong for communicating so poorly, and I saw an almost immediate change in the quality/response time of his messages. I felt so dumb for not bringing it up sooner, as it had been giving me unneeded grief. Another mistake I made much later in the relationship was not taking a stance when dealing a conflict between and my parents. I have a very non-confrontational personality. I try to please people instead of arguing, and tried to smooth things out by not putting my foot down and telling both and my parents what I wanted. I tried to make both parties happy, but instead prolonged what should have been a quick discussion into a long-lasting argument. If I had worried less about stepping on my parents/so's toes and focused more on what I wanted from them, they probably would have a better relationship today. Being more in love with him than he was with me, this was so painful for me. He was on the spectrum and had a hard time showing me his love. It hurt so much not being able to be loved, not missed, nothing. I still love him. I'm so sick of this. My partner is on the spectrum as well. The way he shows love can be different than how I receive it. I had to be very explicit about what I needed from a relationship. Now that he knows what I need, he likes showing me love in the way I like receiving it. Obviously though, every person on the spectrum is their own individual, and your person may not want to show love the way you need it, and I know nothing about your story. TW. Mentions of sexual trauma, trying to compensate my guilt for not wanting to have sex with my boyfriend by having sex with him. I have had sex many times when I didn't actually want to, not because I was coerced or anything, but because I felt like I had to in order for me to be a good girlfriend and wanted his love and affection. He was always very mindful about consent, but I lied about being okay. Now I can't have penetrative sex without bursting out in tears. It sucks a lot. I'm giving you a hug. I know it's very hard, and I'm here for you. Thank you. I suppressed how I felt and tried to play the cool girl because I was scared to be alone and also rejection of my true self. But since I was young, I was still learning to be myself, and this stunted my growth for a period. I didn't set boundaries and was therefore not respected how I wanted to be. I put too much of my time into the relationship and sacrificed my own ambitions. I fooled myself into thinking love is enough and didn't reason with myself that some love is unhealthy and not meant to last. I made excuses for his behavior. Being too needy, being not needy enough, letting important things slide to avoid conflict, ignoring 2 therapists who told me the relationship was not a great idea,